Andy, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. Obviously, a big day in the EFL today, a big day for MK Dons. The decision has come to curtail the season today. Before we get to the decision itself, can you just talk us through how the day's unfolded?
Yes, Anthony, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to speak to supporters today. The vote started, we had two meetings today. We had one in the morning, which started about 10:30 this morning, and that was essentially to run through a number of proposals which had come from clubs, alternatives to how the season might finish. Those were dealt with each in turn. And then we got to a final vote, which was to adopt the the EFL board's resolution, which sought to complete the season on a points per game basis, and then with promotion, relegation, and playoffs being determined in that particular way. The ultimate fallout from that was that the board's resolution was overwhelmingly adopted after the other club resolutions had been put aside. And that meant then we had to move into divisional meetings in the afternoon, where each division was then able to make a decision for itself as to how it wished to either curtail the season or to continue. And we obviously ended up in the championship with a decision there that they are to play out the season and continue. But Leagues One and Leagues Two have voted that the season will be curtailed with immediate effect, promotion and relegation, and playoffs all determined on a points per game basis.
Can you explain then to supporters how that affects MK Dons and how it affects League One and in terms of a table?
Well, first and foremost, we had 9 games left to play, 4 at home and 5 away. Those games obviously now won't take place, and that means that our position is now secure in League One for next season. So we'll kick off the 2021 season in League One, and it means for Coventry and Rotherham, they're automatically promoted. And the teams that are relegated will be Bolton, Southend United, and Tranmere Rovers. And the playoffs will be contested by Wycombe Wanderers, Oxford United, Portsmouth, and Fleetwood Town. So that's the outcome of today's decision. Likewise, in League Two, the teams coming up have been determined. The only difference there is there are some ongoing challenges over Macclesfield in terms of some charges that have come against them, and that could result in points deductions that may end up in a reprieval for Stevenage. Equally, the league is not keen to relegate any club from League Two until such time as a national league can give assurances that it will start on time next season.
So, what is everyone's view on the decision? Obviously, we've said all along that we would go along with the majority. It was an overwhelming majority that voted to curtail the season and to go with the EFL's position. What's MK Dons' view on how this decision's come about?
I think, like anybody, we're missing the buzz and the excitement, and we were ready to come back and play if that had been the decision today. We had no problem with that whatsoever. But what was becoming ultimately clear was that a number of clubs were going to suffer severe financial difficulty. We're looking over the preface if they were to continue. The numbers, we did our own calculations. We knew what it meant for us. It was several £100,000 to continue, and for a lot of clubs, it would have been a lot more. So, having looked at all the different club proposals, we didn't feel comfortable voting against any of them because they all had various merits in them. But what became clear is that clubs were going to go with the overwhelming decision of the board's vote, which was to end the season on the points per game. We've been speaking to clubs, those clubs that have put proposals forwards, those that haven't. It very, very much became clear over the last week the direction of travel was heading towards the league vote, and that was one that we voted in the affirmative to support that board resolution. And then coming this afternoon, it was an overwhelming vote that the season should be curtailed. In fact, I was a bit surprised that more clubs didn't vote for the season to be continued. But that was an overwhelming decision. And I think that's then fair. It sort of, because the decision has been overwhelming, it sort of means that it's very, very clear cut in terms of what clubs wanted to do. And I think everybody can feel comfortable with the decision. Although obviously there'll be a number of clubs who will be hugely disappointed, particularly in League One, that they felt they had a chance of either getting automatic promotion. They might have the comfort of the playoffs. There's clubs outside the playoffs that really thought they could get in there, and it was quite tight. They could have made automatic promotion themselves. And of course, you've got to feel for Tranmere Rovers, who Bolton and Southend, who are relegated. So there's always going to be sort of losers and disappointed people in these situations. That was always going to be the case, as it is with every league in Europe where a decision has been made to curtail their seasons.
Definitely. We'll get on to how it affects season ticket holders shortly, but from a football point of view, what today has done is given some clarity on where we stand. We know the season's over. There's no imminent return to training, or no imminent need to return to training. And I suppose it gives, from the football side of things, yourself and Russell the chance to plan for next year, now knowing what division we're going to be in. And although we still don't know when we're going to come back, there's a bit more clarity that it's not going to be next week.
Yeah, it's very clear. I mean, we were set to go. I mean, we had to put in place various protocols to return to training. If we had to come back, then there was a set of guidelines to return to loose training, no contact. That then evolved into stage 2, which is what the Championship clubs have now moved into, where you can have contact training under certain circumstances. There is a need for all the players to be tested twice a week, and those results are being published and communicated by the league as and when those happen twice a week. And of course, last week we were given a very, very strict protocol on return to play and what that would mean within the stadium, and to play behind closed doors and what that means. So all those things may still actually be apparent for when we do come back for pre-season training. So it's a situation which is far from ideal, but in terms of where we are, and in terms of looking at some of the money we may have to have put out to conclude the season, can now be saved and put forward to covering us over the period when we won't play any games the next few months, which will be very tight for the club, very tight for all football clubs, until such time as we get a definitive date to start the season and the players can return for pre-season as well.
Do we have any idea when that might be?
It was among questions that were put to the league today. Clearly, people want to know when next season's going to start in terms of planning and preparation, not just the clubs, but obviously supporters as well. The league are clearly in a position where they can't make any pronouncements at the moment, because we don't know how the virus is going to play out over the next few months. There's a need for testing regimes. Championship season itself won't be completed until early August. Premier League will also have a bearing on it as well. We were told the Premier League potentially are looking at a date to return sometime towards middle of August to middle of September. And that will be determined by other factors such as qualification for European competitions, the completion of the Champions and Europa League, should they be completed. So all sorts of things at the moment are predicating against any decision being made as to when the season will start. Personally, as my own view, I think we will be looking, obviously we won't be starting on the 1st of August, which was the original start date, because the Championship playoff final won't have been completed by then. So we're probably looking, I would imagine, about the beginning of September to mid-September. And perhaps that as well will give us the best prospect of returning for those initial games in front of crowds. Whether that's on a socially distanced basis or not remains to be seen. We're obviously very encouraged this week by some reports that games in some countries in Europe are playing in front of crowds of about 25% of capacity. If we come back on that basis, then that would be obviously a point where season ticket holders would obviously take priority. Even more sort of excited by New Zealand this week, whereby rugby is returning in front of full crowds, because their record in dealing with coronavirus has been, fantastic, where there's no recorded cases now in the country as we speak. So all those things will play a major determining factor as to when we return. Again, that's without giving any firm date of when we're coming back, because nobody can. The virus, as we said all along, will ultimately decide. I think that's probably about where we're heading to.
Now, moving on to season ticket holders, the club also announced today the compensation policy for season ticket holders who have been affected by the games that won't take place now at Stadium MK. Likewise, those who have purchased individual tickets, purchased tickets to go to the Oxford away game, and mascot packages. Can you just run us through the compensation policy?
Let me start with the season tickets first, because obviously that's what everybody's been waiting to hear. We've worked very hard, as a team over the last few weeks, looking at various options, determining, what we could potentially do to compensate season ticket holders. They will have missed 4 home games this season, so effectively 4/23 of the season as to what they paid for. So the most important thing to say out front is they are fully entitled to a refund, and that's totally indisputable. As we said all along, the entitlement to a refund is, it is not contested by the club or anybody else. So that's the first option. But we wanted also to recognise that, some supporters have written to us very, very kindly and said, well, we'd like to leave the money with the club. We appreciate how things are going to be tight, and we're hugely humbled by those kind gestures that we've received from a few people. But each individual, will have different financial needs, and no one should feel under any pressure as to what they should do or shouldn't do. So we've put a number of other options on the table. So one is to actually, for people who choose to leave their money, or the money they're entitled to with the club, that will actually go to the academy. And the academy is going to be under, like all operations in the football club or all operations in the stadium, is going to be under pressure for next season in terms of how we fund it and continue to run it. We're absolutely determined that the academy exists to give local young talent in Milton Keynes an opportunity to, grow and develop and perhaps realise a dream of being professional footballers at their local football club. So we're totally committed to the academy operation, but it's fair to say things are going to be extremely tight in the way that we fund that for next season. So that's one way we could use those donations that may be left with the club. Thirdly, we're delighted to announce today that one of the shirt for next season, we'll see the return of the black shirt, which has been a popular alternative shirt for us for many years, particularly with supporters. Looks great, and this season's looks even more special. So we're really excited by having that back in the range. But what we're going to do is offer all season ticket holders, certainly adults, seniors, and a number of under 25s, the option to select a free shirt. And that will be the black shirt. And if they, the value of that to a season ticket holder is £38 after the season ticket holder discount, and then they can put the balance towards the academy, so they get something and the club gets something back. And we're hoping that will be, a really good popular option for people to take up. And the other option we put on the table as well is for individuals to select 4 pairs of match tickets for next season. On the basis that they've missed 4 games this season, they can have 4 pairs of tickets for league games next season. And for under 18s and under 12s, where the refunds aren't so high, I think an under 18 is roughly looking at about an £8 refund. We're still going to give them the option to have that black shirt next season at a 50% discount, so they'll get vouchers. So that's the first thing with season tickets. The process for that, again, we're conscious that we've still got lots of our staff on furlough, and that to enable people to make their options or choose their options in a timely way without having to wait for calls back or getting log jammed on telephone lines, is we're going to make the process available online, so people will be able to go onto the website, click into their customer account, and they'll be able to ascertain how much refund they due for their season ticket and car parking, and then be able to select straight away not only one of their 4 options, but should they choose a shirt option, their size as well. We'll then ask for all the shirt choices to be made by the end of June, and then in July we'll place that additional order with Araya, our kit suppliers, and we'd hope then to have the shirts available for supporters in August. So very, very quick turnaround. So we're quite excited by that, and hope that people will look at all those options and consider what works best for their own personal circumstances.
Those who purchase individual tickets, it'll be the same, similar process. They'll be entitled to a refund, obviously, but they will also be able to use that money as a credit for next season if they choose to. But I know there's a bit, it might be a little bit difficult for away tickets. Can you explain why?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of money owing to supporters from Oxford United. Now, technically, that money would have gone to Oxford United direct, because clubs keep all the proceeds of casual match tickets, but we still hold on to that money, so we're able to get those refunds done very, very quickly. We're asking people just to either do one or two things. Just let us know, if they want the refund back, or if they'd like to use that as a credit against an away fixture next season. The only thing I think it's probably fair to point out on that is that as of yet, obviously we're not sure how we're going to return to away fixtures next season, and whether there will be any restrictions on away travel. So that's something just to be mindful of. But equally, regular away travellers, if they want to do that and use that as a credit next season, then they can choose to do that. The same applies to home fixtures. We had 4 games left to play. We had them all on sale, so anybody who had purchased tickets for those four games, any one of those 4 games, can actually claim a refund direct, or again use that as a credit against home games next season as well. Similarly, it applies to people who've purchased a mascot package for next season, very popular with young children and families, and again, a refund's available on that, or again, they can choose to use that against a game next season and give them priority as to any game they want to select. And those options will be simply available by contacting the box office.
And this is from Wednesday at 1 p.m.
Yeah, we sort of worked through the system. We obviously wanted to automate it. We want to test it, and we're looking to have that immediately available for people to use from 1 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday, the 10th of June.
Super. It's we're talking about supporters again. I think it's another opportunity to talk about how the display of commitment that the season ticket holders have given us, and so far by renewing their numbers for next season. We've talked about the uncertainty of how that's going to look next season, but they've still renewed, and I think it's quite important. I think the club felt quite strongly that we gave something back in the way of this compensation policy.
I mean, absolutely amazing. I mean, the money people have continued to pay us the direct debits for the 2021 season, and we're actually bowled over by the fact that just under 4,000 people have already committed to next year. Not even knowing which division we might be playing in. So that, when you take that into factor, not allowing for the other circumstances about when the season might start. So absolutely amazing, and we're so grateful, because that has made a massive difference. Not only to our finances, but to the optimism and backing it gives to our players, to our management staff, and to the whole club. It creates a buzz that we know people are right behind us and want to see us succeed. So on behalf of everybody, a really, really big thank you to each and everyone who has made that leap of faith for next season in extraordinary circumstances.
And finally, the only thing that I believe has also been affected with today's announcement is the early bird deadline. Obviously, the club initially announced that that will be extended to 3 weeks prior to the end of this season. With that season ending today, can you talk about what will happen with the early bird price?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, the early bird deadline normally sort of stops about 3 or 4 weeks before the end of the season, the previous season date, and then we go into the full price list. We took the decision in March when we got straight into into the virus, that we would extend that until such time as the date of the 2021 season, the starting date, was actually known, and that still stands. So we will keep the early bird running, so people now know they can buy League One football. They can still take advantage of the early bird price for next season. And as soon as we get communication from the Football League of the start date, we'll then advise a new deadline for the early bird discount, which will probably be just a few weeks ahead of the season start date. There's still plenty of time for people who want to take advantage of the best possible prices for next season. You can still use a direct debit scheme and spread the payments over 10 months. So, that's something we're very, very keen to remain in place for people who have been waiting on a decision, quite naturally, to see what's going to happen, not only to this season, but to next season as well.
Absolutely. And coming back, looking ahead to next season, the 2020-21 season, I suppose from a football point of view now, it's about preparing the squad for that. Obviously, decisions will be coming. We've talked about Russ has talked about the clarity needed in the season to determine what we're doing with out-of-contract players and building the squad for next season. I imagine that process can start now. We know some clarity ahead of the new season.
Yeah, I think for all clubs now, now you know where you are. We'll be having talks with players that are out of contract, advising them as to the different ways forward, and we will be sort of obviously starting now to make contact with other players after the 23rd of June, which is the date when players become free agents. So there's going to be a huge amount of players under free agents. I think it's going to have massive implications on squad sizes for next year across all football league clubs. So we've got to be really ahead of the game and make sure that we can get a squad as competitive as possible. We go into next season very much with the view that we can compete and that we can have a really, really good year in what will be a very different environment next season to what we've seen this year. So yeah, very looking forward to that, because at the moment it's all been dealing with the end of this season, how we get through it. And I think everyone's just been itching to have some clarity so that we can really focus on next year. And there's been a lot of work done already, to be fair, in terms of in terms of that. But now we can start to go with some confidence, knowing where we are and knowing we're planning ahead for the end of August, September start date, and coming back into pre-season into is probably not too many weeks ahead of us now, probably into mid-July, into July.
And obviously, from a business point of view, business can concentrate on some of the extracurricular stuff that's going on at the moment with the snooker, and that's drawing to a close. Well, the Championship League is drawing to a close this week with another tournament coming up later this month. And again, we've talked a lot about the importance of the business getting back on its feet, and stuff like the snooker returning is great news. And again, with this kind of clarity now, we can concentrate on hopefully more of those things to keep the business going, and hopefully with a hotel opening up soon.
It's been absolutely vital to us and been a lifeline during this period that we've been able to have events like the snooker. It's it's still only a small proportion of what we'd normally be trading at this year. Normally we'd be having 300 bedrooms every night in use, and we only got a small number. But to have the snooker in and to be one of the first events to be shown on live television, and ITV and Matchroom and World Snooker have presented a first-class product onto television, and we're so proud to see the Marshall Arena, being sort of shown in all its glory. But we've been able to host the event very, very successfully across that, and the DoubleTree by Hilton Hotel and Stadium MK. Everyone's really, really played their part to make that happen. So much so that we had the announcement on Friday that a second tournament now is going to run towards the end of June as well. So, and that is, that's credit to all the people who have worked together to get the show on, so to speak. And we were absolutely so proud that it's at Milton Keynes, and to actually hear Barry Hearn last week quote one of the snooker players that Stadium MK was the safest place on earth, hopefully will give people a lot of confidence that we're doing the right things. We're doing absolutely everything we possibly can to make sure that we can, when we return properly, and I mean, in terms of being open to the public and the stadium full, that all the measures are in place and people can feel very, very safe about coming back into the stadium, coming to stay in the hotel, coming to visit an events and arena, and most importantly, coming to watch football matches as and when the government says we're allowed to do that.